count. It's just live. We're live. I love it. It tells you you're live right there on the screen. I think I've mentioned that on more than one episode of the show. I also wore this shirt on more than one episode of the show. Welcome to the Burnham podcast. I'm your host, Danny Burnham, alongside my co-host / brother, Drew Burnham. Good evening, Drew.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome back.
Well, you took another week hiatus. You went to vacation, hung out with a mouse.
I'd love to tell you that I was doing something responsible, but I was
Don't say the name of the place.
hanging out with the mouse for 5 days or something.
All right, with the mouse. We can go with the mouse. Welcome to episode 10 of the Burnham podcast. We're happy to have you guys with us tonight. We always do this thing at night. Always say good evening. Whenever you listen to it, it's okay with us. We don't care when you listen, as long as you listen. That's good. We can live with it.
I'll throw a quick shout out to last week's episode. Pastor Johnny keeping the good evening going for me. Appreciate that.
Pastor Johnny.
Taking care of.
You know, anybody that's just listening to this right now might think we had Johnny Hunt on the episode. Like, it wasn't Johnny Hunt. Last week we had Johnny Harris, who is the worship leader. I called him youth pastor like 3 times in the episode. He's the worship leader at Cassville Baptist Church. Awesome church over in Bartow County. Love him. Love Johnny. Known him since he was a wee lad. He's doing big things for Jesus. Think he did all right?
Oh, he did great.
I thought Johnny did a great job.
Johnny was solid.
Johnny's good. He's a talented cat. He's going to go far. We want to take a minute today. The day we're actually recording this, not the day that you're going to watch it, is June the 6th. This is the 74th anniversary of what we know as D-Day, when Allied forces hit the beach. 160,000 Allied troops hit the beach in Normandy, France, to rid the world of the scourge of Nazism. 9,000 American soldiers died storming the beach. The object was to send more people than the Germans could shoot. So I was looking at the numbers earlier today, and I forget them all off the top of my head, how many thousands of boats they sent and planes and the ordnance used and all the things that went. But I do remember 160,000 guys, 9,000 American dead. Crazy stuff.
Unreal.
These guys, they went. A history person could correct me on this. I was hanging out with my history teacher buddy this morning, Jacob Travis. God bless him. Shout out. And we were talking about it a little bit, but he could correct me on this and say, I really forgot where I was going with that. I'm trying to shout out Jacob and be cool, but I forgot where I was going with my correction. But just the number of people involved, because I think it was 160,000. Pretty sure it was 9,000 American dead. Crazy stuff. I don't know the number of Allied troops total that died that day. But again, the object was to send more guys than they could shoot. This is what I was going to check for correction on. I believe they moved the date. The initial date was going to be like the 2nd or 3rd, and the weather was just horrible.
Wow.
And the weather ended up being bad on the 6th inning anyway. It was raining when they hit the beach. What terrible weather. So these guys are floating in on these boats, and they're watching this cliff get closer and closer. They're attacking this beach, this little beach with a cliff behind it. It's full of Germans and machine gun nests. It's raining on them. They're, thousands of miles away from home. And a whole bunch of them know that they're just going to die. And they went over there and they did it anyway, man. And they by the end of the day, the Allied troops had a foothold in Europe. Thanks to those guys, the average age, I think they said, of the World War II soldier was a little bit older than some of the more modern wars. It was like 26, but these are still young guys. And
yeah, but that's only because they were just drafted everybody.
They drafted guys as old as 41.
Man.
18 to 41 was the draft age, and it lowered down to 37 toward the end of the war. But you're drafting 37-year-old guys still fighting the war. A lot of memorials have guys that were born in the 1920s, 1915, 1912, as far back as that, and they were fighting in the 1940s in this war. But just want to shout that out. Again, you're not going to watch this on D-Day. We're recording it on D-Day, but it won't come out until later on, unless you're watching us live on YouTube right now. But just a little shout out. We're doing our little part, making sure that we don't forget the sacrifices that people made so we can have this country, so we can and sit in my house right now and make this podcast and do things that we do as Americans just on a daily basis.
I think that one gets not really forgotten about, but not completely understood because of when it happened. And there wasn't, you can go back and you can watch TV footage of the 9/11 attacks.
Right.
You can go back and you can watch a little bit of video footage from the Pearl Harbor attack.
Yeah.
And there's some footage of the D-Day attack, but it was so early, man. That
CNN wasn't on the beach when those guys landed.
And it's everything that's there was taken by some guy who was simultaneously running for his life.
Right. Yeah.
And so any video that you find isn't very good, and it's just so hard to understand the scope of how big that thing was. And I just remember that every time I see there's pictures all over the internet where you can go and you can see, and they've got everything laid out, like how many planes, how many boats, how many Zeppelins, how many whatever. And when you can see that, you go, golly, I never knew it was that big.
Yeah,
I never knew it was that
huge operation. It was a big deal. My wife's chuckling at us we got a studio audience.
That's not the time for chuckles.
Serious stuff. She's laughing. She's watching a video and she's laughing. The video is not us by any means, but anyway, we just again want to do our little part to make sure those guys don't get forgotten on a day like today. We're going to talk tonight about Fire Christian Media, what that means, who runs it, what happens there. But first, we haven't plugged a sponsor in a couple of weeks. We're going to do that tonight. Tonight's episode is brought to you by. Yeah, man, we'll put like little cups and everything. Was brought to you by Cold Medicine. Okay, Cold Medicine. I had a cold, and it was starting to pick up last week when Johnny was on with me, and my voice was kind of starting to go, and I had a little cough going, and it got really worse. And I started taking this medicine, and it wasn't working. So then I took this different cold medicine, and it was better. And that's the cold medicine that's sponsoring the show tonight. It's better cold medicine number 2. Cold medicine number 2. Yeah, Plan B, cold medicine. It worked. I'm getting better. My voice is not quite back because I still got a little bit of cough and it's just irritated. But I'm 100% better than I was even yesterday. So thank God for cold medicine. I believe in the healing power of God, by the way. I want to point this out. But I also believe in the ability that God blessed man with to make medicine to make us better. So shout out to Cold Medicine. Thanks for bringing us this episode tonight. So we're going to talk about Fire Christian Media tonight. We mentioned it in previous episodes. I try to mention it every episode. And I don't always. And that kind of dawned on me as weird earlier when we were trying to come up with something to talk about. And I was like, man, we don't really talk about what Fire Christian Media is. So if you heard me mention it and you don't know what it is, if you've never watched the show before, if you watch it and, Fire Christian Media has just never been on the radar because I hadn't put it there, we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to fill you guys in on what that is and who it is. And Drew's got a list of questions that we're going to run down. And hopefully it might answer any questions that you have. And if not, we'll tell you how to get in touch with us. And you can ask whatever questions you do have. So, Drew, fire away.
So assuming that I know nothing about Fire Christian Media.
Assuming.
What is Fire Christian Media?
Fire Christian Media is, I had a thought right mid-question there. Fire Christian Media is, at this point, it's an experiment in media. I don't even know, back in February. This is a new thing. It's been around since we bought the domain name firechristianmedia.com on February 25th, 2018. So we're not even like 3 months into this thing. And it wasn't a week or two before that, God kind of gave me this idea. It's like, you need to do this media thing. And we've got to release episode 1 day.
You got to figure out how to
We got to get it. If you watched us, if you've watched us from the beginning, if you look at Anchor or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us, you notice that our series starts with episode 2. We got an episode 1 that explains so much of this backstory. And we'll get it up one day. You guys can listen to it. But God gave me this idea for Fire Christian Media. And it kind of went along with the dying news industry where, like, I was looking at a local newspaper earlier, And I've lived in this town my whole life. And the newspaper now is exponentially thinner than it was 10 years ago. And that's not any reflection on the local paper. It's the news, the print media is just dying out. So I'm looking at the paper one day and I'm thinking, they're not covering anything locally. Everything's in the newspaper now is AP. They got some local stories, but it's not. Used to be everything in the paper was local, and you had one or two AP stories. But now everything's AP. And what the AP is not doing is covering local church events. Like they're not, interviewing new pastors that come in, and they're not making videos about the passion play that North Northern Church of God has and stuff like that. And they get that gets media exposure because they've been doing it forever. But other stuff that we've covered, they're not covering those things. They're not getting in the newspaper because it's all they can do to get a newspaper out, just because of the nature of the industry. So I'm thinking, what if I had this media outlet that only covered church stuff, Jesus things, ministries and stuff like that. So that's what Fire Christian Media is. And I mentioned that it was an experiment. The experimental part is it's a multimedia platform. We've got social media. We got one on Facebook. We got YouTube. We've got our website, firechristianmedia.com. And we're trying to figure out how to meld all those things together to maximize the exposure that we can give toward the body of Christ as a whole, whether it be, we wrote about specific ministries that churches are doing. We've covered para ministries, if you will, like one guy out doing his thing that God tasked him with. And that's what we did. So we're trying to figure out how to use all these platforms to combine in the digital age and cover all this stuff and spotlight things that don't get a spotlight in regular news media, mainstream news, if you will. We're not mainstream. We're a lot of things. Mainstream's not one of them. I
don't really know if I'd call it that, yeah.
Yeah, we're not that. All right.
So
hopefully that answered. I've rambled for a minute on that, but hopefully that answered that question.
So you've got Fire Christian Media. What are you doing to spread that word and get as many people listening to you as you can?
Well, we are, again, it's a multi-platform thing. We got this podcast, and we write news articles like you'd read in the newspaper about stuff that we're doing. YouTube videos. The only thing on our YouTube channel right now is the podcast. We want to use, it's so easy these days to do this. It's easy because you got the Facebook Live. You've got, we're live on YouTube right now, and we're recording the audio of the podcast, and we're going to release it on, I think we're on like 11 different podcast hosts now. I guess that's all over. You can find us anywhere on the internet these days. And it's so easy to do this stuff, and we just got to figure out how to maximize all those things in order to get the word out. Right now, my experience is in traditional media, and traditional media is dying. Like it's drying up and blowing away. God bless them. But we're just trying to figure out how to, maximize the tools that we have available now in the digital age. So it's video, it's audio, we're still writing things, camping, putting out articles, and the Lord's giving it to us, and we're taking it as it comes. So that's how we're getting the word out.
So who produces all your content?
That'd be me. This is and Drew helps me out with the podcast. It's a big thing. Speaking of putting out more content, one of our goals, I mentioned Facebook Live videos. One of our other goals is to have a more regular podcast, and we're here once a week doing this.
Yeah.
But different episode, more, and other people, like other totally different podcasts, people that have podcasts that we share through Fire Christian Media, on any topic related to Christian life, and we're talking about sports. You and I had this conversation the other day, and
why we're talking about sports?
Why are we talking about sports?
Because I like football.
Drew's a football coach. He loves it. It's awesome.
There it is.
So we're talking about developing a sports department. Well, you can't. I mean, you could, I guess, if you sit down every single day, and we're going to talk about sports, and we're going to talk about sports as it relates to the Bible. Let's read this Bible verse about the NBA Finals. And we could do that every day, or we could just have some Christian guys that talk about sports that don't focus on, the beer ads and the cheerleaders and, whatever. God bless them. But, that's just the sports, and just be Christian guys talking about sports. And you could, like I said, I guess you could stick a Bible verse on everything. And this is how it applies to, but I mean, you can just be Christians and talk about football.
And I think that was kind of one of the things we were talking about when we were talking about starting this one, was kind of the whole idea behind this show was just two Christian dudes who show you that you can be good Christian dudes and do regular stuff. This
show kind of ends up as a catch-all.
Yeah.
And with some of the other shows that we're working on, we want to do more specific things. I like this show. I want other people to do the more specific, like, main line,
I like this show.
Yeah, this is cool. We got a good thing going.
Do whatever I want.
But as far as who produces the content, man, it's
Rick.
Yeah, we're good. I've written every article that's been written so far. Editorials, we've done column type stories, we've done features, we've done a few news pieces. But it's, and then we got video and things like that. And that's something we're going to utilize a little more in the not too distant future.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sweet. So
next question.
You already covered, the kind of things that we've covered. You kind of ran through that just now.
Mm-hmm. Specific. I want to get into some specifics on things that we've covered.
Cool.
Yeah.
What else have we got?
I don't know. I'm looking at your question list. Some of the stuff we've covered, man, there's awesome stuff going on in ministry around here. We've talked about Trail Life, which is a Christian-based scouting organization. It's a lot like other scouting organizations, except for everything they do is wrapped in Scripture. We wrote an article about it. It's on our website, firechristianmedia.com. Check it out. There is Living Proof Recovery, which is a drug addiction recovery center here in Rome. That's a ministry even more than just helping people, recover from drug abuse and people that have just gotten out of jail, all kinds of stuff like that. And they do awesome stuff. There's a ministry that belongs to a church. The church is called the Empty Tomb down in Cave Spring, Georgia. These guys have an indoor archery range down there, and it's called Center Shot. And it's a really cool thing. Center Shot's nationwide, but it gets adopted by different churches, and they do it in their area. But there's an article about that on the website. Yeah, man.
I hadn't seen that one.
But it's based on, there's verses about archery in the Bible. There's so many that he's hunting and, all this stuff. And so they do that to bring, men into their church and boys and women and girls for that matter. But it's all centered around archery. They have this range in there, and it's sponsored, and they got this specific type of bow that they use, and it's really cool. But this is some of the stuff. Monday, we did an article on Jack Phillips, whose name escaped me for just a second there, the cake baker in Colorado, and how what the Supreme Court verdict meant for religious freedom and stuff. So we're doing all kinds of stuff. We've done sports. We've covered shorter football. We've done some shorter softball. We're going to hope to do a lot more of that in the future. Bring you guys some sports to go along with the other stuff we got going here. But that's some of the stuff we've covered, and it's been awesome. It's been so much fun getting the work of the kingdom out into out into the spotlight a little bit, where it doesn't always get that kind of exposure, and the best part is calling people and asking them about this stuff and telling them I'm going to write this article about you. We're going to make this video and all this stuff. And they're just blown away. And that's such a blessing to me to be able to give those people, that exposure for their ministry that they work so hard on. And not asking for it. Nobody's calling and being like, hey, I'm doing something awesome. You want to write a story about it? Like, no, I'm like digging this stuff up and finding out, which, by the way, call me and tell me what you're doing. It makes it so much easier, because right now I'm chasing you guys around trying to, but we want to help. We want to help the church, the body of Christ, and shine that spotlight on people who are shining their light on Jesus. So that's some of the stuff we've covered, and it's been awesome. It's been great.
So that thing that you were doing before you did this, Rally for Christ.
Rally for Christ.
What happened to that?
Well, it was a really good time to kind of take a break from Rally for Christ. Rally for Christ, the way we were doing it, cost a ton of money. I mean, it cost a bunch of money, and we weren't getting any financial support.
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody gets on preachers that get up in front of the congregation and thump on money all the time, but ministry costs money, man. And the way we were doing it wasn't, I'm not complaining because it costs a lot of money. Like, we loved every bit of it, and the sacrifice is worth it. And it was, I think, more of a blessing to us to do that than even the people who received out of the stuff we were doing. But it did cost a lot of money, and we needed to kind of take a little break and retool on that. And it's not done. I thought it might have been initially when God was like, hey, do this Fire Christian Media thing. And I even said as much on Facebook, and I was going to change the Rally for Christ Facebook page and just make it the Fire Christian Media page and just kind of keep it going. And then I ended up doing a separate page and turning it into a whole separate thing. But Rally for Christ is not done. We're not done with it yet. Me and Chris Harris were talking about it the other day, my partner. And just a little background on that. Again, this is an episode 1 thing. We got to release episode 1. But Rally for Christ started in 2015 during, we live here in Georgia, and the Confederate flag is a big deal. And people are all up in arms. And I love my flag, and I hate your flag. And my buddy Quentin Carter says, hey, everybody's fired up about this flag thing. Why don't we take the Christian flag and stick it on the back of a truck and like have this ride through town like so many people were doing here in the South with the Confederate flag? So I'm like, yeah, that's good. He asked me to help. So I said, yeah, I'm cool. Let's do that. So then we're going to have this ride. And then we thought, well, man, we got to do something at the end of the ride. So we had a rally. That was the first Rally for Christ. That's what we call it, the end of the ride. And we've done other rallies since then. Then we got into, I'm not even sure how we got into like disaster recovery. You know what? I do know how we got into it. My buddy Chris, that's my other partner, Quentin, went a different direction in media. God called him. He's a community pastor now at North Church in Rockmart, Georgia. But so that just kind of left me and Chris with it. And so Chris does this thing where he goes into these less fortunate neighborhoods and he gives out clothes to these people and food and all kinds of stuff. And we went to church with this guy. His name was Bruce Moore, who was from this little town in West Virginia called Richwood. And Bruce said, hey, man, there's a whole town in West Virginia that could use your kind of ministry. And so Chris was like, hey, man, you want to go to West Virginia? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we go to West Virginia and we give out clothes and food to people that need them for a couple of days.
Other than that, there was this entire town in West Virginia that needed your kind of ministry. Did you know anything at all about this place you were going?
No. We knew that the opioid epidemic was a serious issue in West Virginia. And we knew that 65% of the town will live below poverty. And that's pretty much it. That's about all we knew. So we rolled into this town and the whole game changed. And I've really got to get episode 1 out. It explains all this stuff. So we make a lot of connections in that town. Well, that was, excuse me, that was October, Halloween weekend, 2015. Goodness gracious.
Man, you all right over there? You gonna live?
I'm gonna make it. We're sponsored by cough medicine. So that was Halloween weekend, 2015. And then the very next summer, they had what they call a 1,000-year flood, the Cherry River that runs right through town there. They had this massive flooding. The town is in like this valley, and the river runs right through the middle of it. And massive, massive rain over the course of several days, and it just flooded in and wiped out the entire middle of town. So we're attached to these folks. We have to go back. So we go back, and we're helping clean up. We went back 2 or 3 more times after that. Cleaning up. Man. So then there's a tornado in South Georgia at one point. And people were like, hey, that's your thing, right? You gotta go do that. So we went, and it wasn't like a burden. I don't mean to sound like, oh, we gotta go, it was cool. We got up, went down there and did it and cleaned up after tornadoes. And then there was wildfires, and Tennessee, and we went up there after that, and and it turned into this disaster recovery thing. It ended up costing a ton of money. So we're gonna kind of retool, and we were kind of doing things like running off to disaster recovery areas just for the sake of running off to disaster recovery areas, and we need to be a little more calculated about that and how we spend money and things like that. But all that to say, no, Rally for Christ is not done. It's
So is it gonna come back?
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to come back. It's definitely, and I'm not sure exactly in what form. We'll have to have rallies, I guess, or we'll have to call it something else.
We have to call it something else.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We don't call it anything else. It's a pretty cool name. We dig it, so we're going to stick with it. It is going to come back. It's going to be awesome.
Just make a side note. The two colorblind guys on the same podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody tell me what color that cup is?
Drew and I
are good light there.
Are both. I don't know if you caught that or not. Drew and I are both colorblind. There's
Blue, purple.
Some debate over the color of this cup. We're pretty sure this one's red.
That one's most definitely red.
This one's red. So if you're watching 26 minutes in, listening, I guess if you're listening, you won't be able to tell. But if you're watching this YouTube video,
comment.
You can, let us know.
Really want to know.
Let us know. We got to know what color we're going to find out who watches this way too. What color is Drew's cup? Purple or blue?
Any takers?
Could be green even. I don't know.
It's really funny. On that note, when people find out that you are, and then they want to ask you what color everything in the room is,
man, that's the worst.
And then the first time you give them some kind of crazy answer, like, what?
Donald, do you really see? Is that
you live your whole life like this? Yes, this cup might be some shade of green. I don't know.
Well, and what I like doing is when they hold up a cup that I know is green, and I go, man, that cup is like, it's pink or it's, really? Oh, I thought you just saw black and white. Then you got to explain it. God bless them. It's not that bad being colorblind. Everything has a color. It's just not, the same color everybody else sees.
My question has always been, get 14 levels deep on you.
All right.
This cup is red.
Right.
You see it red. I see it red. You see it red.
I got you.
When you see red, do you see this color or do you see this color? Because the world will never know.
Oh, man. Is my red different than your red?
That red is red.
Is my red different?
And if you see it different, you just see it different, but you know that it's red. Do y'all see the same color, or have we just been taught that that's red?
That's deep. I don't know what kind of scientist or geneticist or biologist, whoever we got watching, listening, somebody. Do we all
help
see
us, Jeff Rice?
Do we all see that Jeff's thing, Dr. Jeff?
So.
I don't know. I've been told my whole life my beard is red, and if everybody sees a different red than me, then
old Bluebeard the pirate there.
Maybe my red is your blue. Man,
deep.
That's one of those when I get to heaven questions, I think. All right,
off the color wheel.
Off the color wheel. Well, that's okay. Well, yeah, it's that's something that I've come to understand about Fire Christian Media and about this podcast and about this whole thing that I'm into these days. It's mine. I can do whatever I want.
Hit the button. Let's go.
If I want to talk about being colorblind on my episode about something else altogether, that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll have an entire episode devoted to being colorblind one time and how that's been an inconvenience for us at one time or another in our lives. But God gave me this thing, man. Do whatever I want to with it as long as it's okay with him. So we're talking about being colorblind on our episode about Fire Christian Media. It is what it is. I love it. This is awesome. It's one of the coolest things I ever did.
Love it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. We are approaching that half-hour mark. Thank you guys for sticking with us this long. And I think we're going to jump off here because it just seems like the appropriate time to do that.
I think so.
Drew, where can people find you on social media?
Drew Burnham on Facebook, at Coach Burn D on Twitter.
There you go. I am Danny J. Burnham on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find Fire Christian Media on Facebook.com/Fire Christian Media. There's also firechristianmedia.com. You can email us at firechristianmedia@gmail.com. There's a contact us form on our homepage, on our main page on the website. Just scroll down a little bit. It's down there. Fill out the little form. We'll get back to you. If you have questions, comments, something you'd like to let us know about that you're doing, something you want to hear us talk about on the podcast, something that you would like to see us add to the Fire Christian Media platform, we'll do it. It'll be fun. Right?
Very interactive. Very interactive.
Yeah, I wish it was like more interactive.
If there's ever a time that you hear something and you say, man, I wish they'd talk a little bit more about that, leave it in the comments on the YouTube video. We'll get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll come back and hit it again. Because we make this look easy, I got to say.
Man, you guys are colorblind? I want to know all about that.
But we
do 3 colorblind.
Rack our brains, guys. We didn't know what we were going to talk about tonight until, I don't know, about an hour before we hit record. So, God always provides, but sometimes we got to get out of his way. But anyway, we're out of here. We're done. This show's over.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. Let us know what we can do for you. We love you. Amen. God bless.